My name is Johan Hedman. I'm the lead developer at a company called Square Moon. Very strange name, I know. And we are located in Sweden, in Northern Europe. We don't have icebergs on our streets or anything like that, but it's a little bit colder than here, I can tell. We're about 24 employees with a bunch of sub-consultants located in 3 different cities. And we are one of the ones that are platinum partners. So we had to attend a partner meeting yesterday. What I also am, I'm definitely one of these guys. I'm a problem solver. I remember when we got that t-shirt at the DevCon maybe 10, 12 years ago. And the problem solver is not only what I do in my daily business at work. I feel like I'm a problem solver when I'm not working as well. So I'm really proud of that t-shirt, and that's the only one I've kept. The rest are somewhere in the drawer, and yeah, they kind of disappear. But I really like that one, so I kept that one. I'm also the host of the conference called NGHU. They got a prize at the Excellence Award here that I'm really proud of. It is an English-speaking conference over in Europe, in Antwerp, in the fall, in November. So if you don't have any plans for November, feel free to come and join. It's the 4th edition, and we have attendees coming from all over the world, from Australia, from Canada, US, all over Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So it's a really good way to learn more. If you want to come, there's a way to scan for more information about the conference. Okay, a little bit more about me. I love adventures. This is me in Northern Europe, climbing some of the mountains up there. It's called the Devil's Cliff. And when I'm not out doing that kind of adventures, I love to eat good food. And this is me at a conference in Italy last year when we met up after the conference took place and had some really Italian good food. And who doesn't love Italian food? But that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about integrations. And there are so many different kinds of integrations. I think most of us know the word, but not everyone are using it today. So why should we invent things that already exist? Because we're really good at building solutions in FileMaker. We can build them to almost any extent. But there is a lot of these solutions out there today that you can integrate words to get to their expertise without you having to build it. I could easily build myself an accounting solution, but our far better solution are working day and night to build an accounting solution. So by using their expertise, I can integrate to that solution instead of getting the advantage of using that one. So why invent things that exist and already are good, such as Stripe for getting your payments done, maybe to Slack or DocuSign, to Shopify to get your orders out of the way, or the entire AWS board, or the MS Graph availability. You got the whole Google API. You got QuickBooks, for example, for accounting, and Salesforce. You might need to do something with PayPal, or you need to send an email, and you can use MailChimp or Mailgun or something equal to that. So think about this. Your solutions are not only for the users that are running FileMaker. It could also be for your marketing team. They need to access some parts of your data, or the accounting that take care of your business. Maybe your web agency that needs to pull out your website, your partners, or maybe external workers. So your data could also be available for someone else. And that's giving that possibility of integrating to you. So how many of you have done an integration from your solution today? Yeah, good. And if we take the opposite, how many of you have a solution that someone else integrates to it? A few. Okay, good. So there are a few different kinds of integrations that we can work with. And in FileMaker, by far the most popular ones are to use the script that calls insert from URL. But we could also export data in all different kind of ways. We've been able to do the CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, and a whole bunch of other delimited file shapes. But the most common one, where we would like to integrate to another solution, is by using the one called insert from URL. An insert for URL is just one step. But inside of that, there are a number of things that you would need to be able to integrate to another place. So for example, if I'd like to be super hot and do AI and connect myself to the ChatGPT, I need an account on ChatGPT. So first off, you need to probably sign up for the account where you'd like to connect to. And then they most often are asking you to create a token. And a token is like, when you go to your hotel and check in, you get a card to be able to access your door. And that's valid for a number of time, maybe until you check out or maybe run out before that. Same thing with a token. It's valid for a number of minutes, hours, or days. So when that expires, you need to ask for a new token. Once you have that token, you're able to call that API as much as you want to, and as many times as you want to usually as well. And then what the documentation users say, then you should log out. But we really don't have to, but we can. So that could look something like this. So down here, I created a variable with all the things that I need to call. So I'd like to do post to get the information. This is the token that I received earlier that I choose to put in a variable. And then the ID that I got from the API over here, together with any kind of secret or passwords that they might have, and a number of parameters that this specific API are requested. Then we're going to this insert from URL step, and that's what we're going to look into now. So in the insert from URL, we need a few things. We need a URL that we're going to be calling, and that's also usually well documented in the API they're requesting to get information from. So that's the dialog from insert from URL. And the first one there is to provide the URL. So I type that up in a variable so that I always have it visible, so it makes it easier to see where it's supposed to go. And we need somewhere to put the result. And we have two options. We have a field that could be a real field, a global field, or whatever you choose, or a variable. And a variable is when it's only $1 variable. It's only available in that script. So once the script is done, that information is going to disappear. And we need the call from what exactly this API is making. And on the former slide, you saw it probably needs the token. It needs to know in what way you'd like to talk to it, and the login information. And then once that's done, you most probably also need to capture for any kind of error that comes. So you need to be aware of that you might be doing some wrong calling it, the API might be down, or there might be other problems. So always look for errors in the result. I remember in this case, I get the information back as JSON. It could be an XML or other resources. And I'm looking for the result inside a variable. And I'm checking to see if there's an error in there. And if there's an error, I'm saving that to another variable to look for problems so that I can take actions if needed. So if I'm, for example, are trying to update a spreadsheet in Google, which we can do without any problems, I need an account to Google. I need to know where that account are storing this specific spreadsheet. And then I need a set of data. So in FileMaker, we can create JSON. So that JSON can hold all that information that we need. And for a spreadsheet, it says rows. Everyone who does Excel knows that rows is a row, like we have in FileMaker, so like records. And then we're saying it, what are the columns? And where is our data stored? So we can give them all that information and post data into the spreadsheet that everyone can have a look at. So we can give everyone an awareness of the data that we have in FileMaker. So when we do that, the URL might be looking something like this. So the API says sheets, googleapis.com, spreadsheets. And then it's the unique ID for the spreadsheet I'm trying to reach, and the values along with the API key that you're requesting right here. This will give us an update of that data in that spreadsheet. So in this case, the curl will give us a lot of information here. But what we are saying is that we'd like to give information to that spreadsheet, and we're saying we're giving that with some JSON, but it could have been XML or something else. But we are making it clear that we're posting it as JSON, along with that token saying we actually have access and the data that we created in the dialog before. So all of that information is sent along to that spreadsheet, and then we're making sure that we're saving again the result is something we can look into, so we know that we can handle any kind of errors that comes back. And we put the URL into the URL, and the same thing with the codes. And in this case, if we do run into a problem and the API is down, they don't give us a result in JSON back, they give us back an HTML problem. So you need to cater for the different problems that could occur. And here we're looking to see if the pattern count of exact this part exists. Then we would know the API is down. Or else, if the result holds an error, we did something wrong, posting information, didn't have the right access or so, we are looking for that specific error. And then we can take action. So if the variable is not equal to 0, meaning it's not empty, then we need to tell the user that we don't have an access or we did something wrong. So when using insert from URL, you would always get a response. It could be a timeout, but will still be a response giving you a result so that you can see what it looks like. We're going to look into that in the demo in a short while. But before we do that, there are other ways of integrating with other solutions. One of them being exporting data in different formatting ways. So for example, might be that one of your integration solutions need an XML file that you need to build in a specific way that are unique for that solution. And you know your data because you know all the fields, you know all your relationships, so you can build that because FileMaker have a very structured way of knowing your data. This is payments table. You would know the keys. You know all the fields that exist in that table, so you can easily build up that XML for that. And an easy way to showcase how that works is that I create a global field that I emptied before I get started to make sure I don't have anything else once I get started. And then I'm declaring that I would like to export XML. I want it to be in the format of UTF-8, which is what this client asked for, but it could have been any other format they wanted. And then I start building the XML. And as you can see here, I'm adding information that already exists. So I'm saying, to this field, add this value that already exists from here. And this is the first line of the XML. And then I'm adding things here for each of the different rows that are requested until I reach the record that I need to loop through. And then for every record, I'm just adding a new value so that it here gets the value that it had before, plus the new value, plus the new value, plus the new value, until I run and loop through all of those records that was needed for this export. And then, of course, you always need to end once you loop through the record. And then once that is done, we need to export that data. And sometimes if you did what I did here, I used a global table, which usually in my case only holds one record. But in case it holds more records, it would have had exported all the records that exist. So here I'm just making sure I only have one record before I do the export. So I only have one replica of what's going to be exported. And then I use the function in FileMaker called export field contents of that field, and I'm telling it to be exported to this place. And as you can see at the top, I have two variables, one saying this is the file that I like to export with a unique file ID since I'm using the current timestamp. And then I'm using the file and get documents part to put that file to be exported to my documents folder. But it could also be run on the server because the document folder is available for your server as well. So make sure you export field contents. And once that is done, I'm also trying always to be secure about where that file is being stored. So I actually go to a specific table and store that file. So I insert that file to a container field. So if the solution fails in some way exporting that data or sending that file away, I always have the file sorted out so it can get back to that file. So in some cases, your clients or yourself might need to upload that file to another resource so it's available for someone else. And here's an easy example of how you can do that. You could be using insert from URL to send your files to another location, but there is a plugin called Base Elements from a company called Goya, where you easily can use their function that is called FTP upload, where you need to secure URL saying this is the URL I'd like to push the file to. This is the folder where I want it to be stored. That's the file that I want to put there. And then the username and password so that I can get access to that folder. And then I can push the file in almost in the direction that I want to. It could be to a shared folder, it could be to a Microsoft dimension, or anything else that the client want me to. And then they can pick it up. So I have an example file that you can download from the web page, where I built a super simple file to connect to the recipe search API. It's called the mealdb. It's super simple. And I'll open up the file in a second, but what it's doing here is that we're just asking this database, based upon what a search we were doing, to give us a clue of what we can use that is still in our coolers. I might have some meatballs or something else that I would like to eat. And I'd like to have a recipe of what goes well with that. So any API that you like to connect to usually have some kind of a documentation. Some are better, some are worse, but most of them are actually really good. In this case, it's called the mealdb. And in the example file, there are links to it, so you can use that. But another thing that I use whenever I'm trying to integrate is that I create a number of custom functions. These ones are so that I don't have to write down specific headers, the data that I would like to know, the requests or so. Instead, they're stored in a custom function so that I don't have to replicate them or write a long letter in any way. I'll open them up in a second so you can see what it looks like. So, and go with the FileMaker and then move it over here, and then let's see. So right now, this is going to be fun. There we go. So say I had lamb in my fridge, and I wanted to see what I can do from there. Here I have first. We hit the search button. What's happening then is that it runs off and calls the mealdb and gives us examples of what I can do from that one. And I can run through these records to see the different recipes that comes back. And you can see here, I'm just showcasing them in a web viewer here to show the different kinds and what's included. These are the results that came back for me giving the call. And if we look into what that looks like, let's first have a look at those custom functions that I talked about. So custom functions are right here. And if we open up, for example, one of them, this one here, you can see I'm trying to make it easy for myself to reuse the same thing that I'm calling every time. So the variable name here is something that I can reuse. So I only need to call it, and it will print this part for me every single time. So I don't have to remember what that's supposed to be like. I just need to send along the data, and it will write that text as they want it to. And if we look into another example, this is the way the string that we want to have, or making the curl knowing how we would like to format that data. And that's the same thing for the other ones. And if we go back out of here and then we open up the script workspace and we look into, go. These are the things that I would need to make a call. So I need the curl. I need a URL to call, and in this case, it's called the mealdb.com with API, and it's JSON it's communicating with, and this is B1. I'm giving the API key, which is free in this case, and I'm just giving them the search word they had in that field that you saw earlier. Back, I'll get a response that I'm putting into my response field, and then showcasing that one in the result field. So if we close this one up and we have a look at, there we go. So the result of what comes back, it's right here. It's the JSON that we got us back as an answer. So this will hold us all the information of that's, they like us to cook a Moroccan lamb. I need some olive oil and honey and so on. So those are the ingredients that we need to be able to make that meal. So this file is going to be available for all of you to play around with. And it's a really good example of getting started because it's so easy to get an API key from this resource. But if you would like to connect to Google or AWS, you sign up for an account there, and then it's not that difficult to get an API key from them either. For OpenAI, it's super easy to get their key as well. Okay, so to get you more meat on your meals, so to speak, that we say in Sweden, I'm gonna give you a whole bunch of examples of what kind of integration that I use more or less on a daily basis, so you can get an idea of why I think it's so important for you to do integrations. So one of my customers, they're working on this gig economy to help person on a private label to fix different things. It could be IT problems, assembling furnitures, building kitchens, setting up electrical car chargers, and much more. So they use temporary workers for the different skill sets. And they have native apps to connect to the FileMaker resource that we set up. So think of yourself that you have a web page or a web store or your client have one, where they are building up things, and once you're ready to shop and pay for the things, they need to enter the information. And it might be that they need to enter an email address, a phone number, or a personal unique ID, a personal number. In the back end of each one of these three fields, there is a trigger. The first one there, the email address, it goes into the database and looks for, is this already an existing customer? And if so, it brings back the customer's information and pre-populate the form so they don't have to enter it manually. If it's a phone number, we are calling an API to pick up that information if we can't find it in our own database. And for the personal number, we are calling a third API for that. So depending on what field they're populating, we're calling different APIs to populate data in our web forms. That's a really good customer experience because that saves them a lot of time entering information. And also in the long run, you want to have clean data, and the more reliable data you can get in your database, the better. To do that, we are working together with a web agency to create the web page for that client. And what we provide for them is something that we do in here. This is a tool called Postman, where we document what's available for each of the different clients to connect to our databases. And the URL is up there saying them what the call is going to be like and how is the result going to be like once it gets back, if it works okay. If it was an error, we'll prove to them what the error might be. And I'm going to jump out of here, and then I'm going to jump into Postman, and I'm going to move it over here a sec. So this is Postman, and if you look to the right there, you can see that this is the documentation we have for this specific one. And even on a very high level, we say on this specific version, this was added. And for that version, those fields were added to make it clear for them what they need and can do for this specific function. And back here. So all of you, or most of you, probably are working with some kind of a web form. You get your data posted into your FileMaker solution, and there are multiple different ways to do that. We have Studio, we have BP Forms, we have WordPress, along a whole bunch of other ones. These clients want to create his web form by themselves. So while the salesperson is out with the client, they would like to produce that for the partner-specific web form. So what they're using a web portal called BP Forms, where it's almost like being in FileMaker. They just drag and drop their fields. And what we've given them is a way of communicating with FileMaker through a webhook. And a webhook, in this case, is Connect. So we're using Claris Connect to post data into FileMaker. And the only thing this client needs to know is this specific URL. So whenever they are posting, or the client are posting, or the partner of that client are posting the data into FileMaker, it will run through Claris Connect and a number of few steps. So BP Forms feeds Claris Connect that are feeding your database. Claris Connect is a lot like another bigger tool called Zapier that can do a lot more, but now we are Claris friendly, so we stick to Claris Connect. And in Claris Connect, we only need 3 steps. First one here is being the webhook, where we are saying this is the information that we will receive for that web call. Secondly, we need to create a record, and what we are doing is we're running a script. And if we look into them into more detail, this is what it will look like. So here's the URL that we gave to the client so that they can reuse for any of their web forms. They have about 150 live web forms that they use on a daily basis. They are feeding the solution. The only thing that they need is that URL. Secondly, we are telling the solution that we want to create a record. So now we're in Connect. We're saying we want to connect to this specific file. We want to use this layout. We'd like to pull out of the information that we get from the webhook, we'd like to put the data into the body, web, board type. And for the rest of the data, we'd like to put it into the body field. And what's happening behind the scenes there is that Claris then goes well and firing off a new record into your database on that specific layout. And here is what the data can look like. So this is what JSON comes in, and everything that was in this body, all of this JSON is going to be coming into that field. And then you can parse it out to whatever field that you like. So that's why in the third script, we are running a script. And that script we call process. And then what it's doing is reading JSON, because JSON we're really good at in FileMaker. So then we're parsing the data to that table and child records to feed the data that is needed. Take an example. I talked about the native apps. So they both have them for Apple and Androids. There are about 1,500 active users that works on this on a daily basis. And of course, then we had to create an API for them as well, and a unique API for that. And the apps looks a little bit like that. But what's important here is that there are 1,500 users that are talking to FileMaker. They are not only creating information, but they're also retrieving information or updating existing information. So again, what we did, that we created an API with the documentation in Postman, so the app team that sits down in Sri Lanka have a way of understanding how they can get to the data. And in this case, we are trying to get to all person areas that are available for this solution. And back comes a JSON that is structured and very easy for the client to understand, so that they in the app can populate that and show that to the users. And all the functions that you see here on the left side are different kind of functions. And in total, there are about 400 different functions for this API, and all of them are scripts. So from an outside, you can actually call FileMaker and run a script. And in FileMaker, we can control what we'd like to send back. We can also check whether they are actually using their API in a way that we want it. We can control everything. So it's much better doing error trapping that way. In this case, we have the clients using the apps. We need a firewall to make sure they aren't calling from the wrong place or with the wrong kind of calls. And then we have a proxy that are spreading the workload in between different work sources to reach the database. So we have approximately 150,000 calls per day towards our FileMaker database, which is quite a lot. That's about 1.74 calls per second. And people usually sleep during the night, so you can imagine what is this during daytime. But we have about 5,000 calls to that server that comes in that are bad. So we really need to control that we only get the right kind of calls coming in. Some of those are from the wrong region, so we can say that we don't do business to China or Brazil or whatever it might be. We can take those off. But we also have about 500 calls towards that server coming in on a daily basis where people are trying to reach information that they shouldn't. So when you open up for someone else to get closer to your information, you need to be aware of that there are people out there that really kind of want to harm you out. And then out of that one, we use the proxy to leverage the data load a little bit. So we cache a bit of the data, and then this is the number of calls that actually reach the server. If you want to know more about that, I have the left session here is my presentation from last year at Engage You when I talk more about that. It's a movie that's on YouTube. And the right one there is for the Engage You YouTube channel, where we have all the sessions that never took place throughout the years. Yes?
So when you create the record, are you committing it at that same time? Do you need it to be committed? Or are you doing an error checker to go back to say, delete uncommitted records?
Yeah, so I reply your question. So when there is a call coming into the server, with there usually at least one parameter that goes along with, if there are more, then of course there are more. And depending on the function, we are committing the record if everything is okay. And then we're giving the response back saying everything went okay. But if there were anything wrong during the way, we give them a unique error message coming back so they would know, so the app would know what kind of action they need to take. Thank you. You're welcome. The right one here is for all the Engage You presentations that took place the last 3 years. So have a look at that one to learn more about what you can do with FileMaker. Third example, and this is probably something that all of you should be doing. I talked about accountings before. In Sweden, one of the bigger accounting solutions is called Fortnox, but over here it might be QuickBooks or something equal. An accounting solution are built for the purpose of being an accounting solution. And there are multiple reasons why you should use that as an API resource to connect your solution to. Because your accountant will demand a lot of things for you if you're trying to build your own accounting solution. So instead, you should connect to that one to send all your invoices, check for when they are being paid. You can send the salaries and all different kind of things. So on most of the solution I build, I'm sending my invoices to the accountant solution, and I check for that later on when it's being paid. So in FileMaker, I can see in my FileMaker solution that it's being paid, but all the economy-wise transactions take place in that solution. In FileMaker, we are quite good at storing data in different fields, but we might have a notes field where we store a whole bunch of things for different purposes. What's important is to have data integrity and have clean data in your solution. One of the way of doing that and keeping your data up to date is, for example, your customer base. If a customer moves or go bankrupt or whatever it might need, if you're sending out an invoice to the wrong address, it might not get paid. So by connecting to a credit institute like CreditSafe or maybe your bank, you can get detailed information about that client so that you can update your database solutions. So, for example, in that web store, if we didn't get that client, but we did have his personal number, we can call a credit safe to get the detailed information about this client and store that in our database. So we always have the latest update on that client. The Google API is huge, and we can't even go into details of what you can do, but there are a massive amount of things. But one of the things that are really cool, and that's a solution that you can look into, and that's Seed Code's Pro Maps. It's a FileMaker solution where we are populating all the different works that are available right now with a bunch of filters on the side there where we can choose and select, and we'll just update this map automatically. But to be able to feed that map with information, we need a location. And for location, we need to call Google's API to get that latitude and longitude. And what they're asking for then is the address, the city, and the country. In some cases, you might need a state if you're over here. And in some cases, you need address too, and a few other things. But in this case, when we're making the call, it should be looking something like this. We are looking at the Google APIs, and we want to use the Maps API. We'd like to give it and say, we'd like to respond back to be in JSON. And what we're asking for is the destination along with the Google Maps key. So that's another key that you need to request. And once you do that, it could be looking something like this. So we, again, use insert from URL. We are looking for a status that says OK. If the status back is OK, then we would know that within the result, we can find results, geometry, location, and lat, meaning latitude and longitude. So we can store that result in our file, in this case in the order table, so we can exactly pinpoint where the address is going to be. And if the case is that we don't get the result, that the address can't be found, we need to make sure we are making it clear that we can't find it, so we don't go search for that address again over and over. And once we have that, we could pinpoint all those customers or orders, whatever it might be, to a map like this. And this is Sweden, but it could be the state of US or whatever. Another way is your business probably need to have good reviews on your webpage. So you can integrate to Google Reviews. And for every 10th business you do, you send an invite to your customers to say, what do you think about us? Did I do a good job? And then they can rate you. And those ratings you can put on your webpage. And that's a really, really good reference for yourself and your business. We talked about the Google spreadsheet before. Think about the CFOs at a quite big company. They aren't really interested in going into our FileMaker solution and doing searches and trying to find out what we built. What they're interested in is the KPIs, the numbers, where are we going, where are we heading, what's good, what's not good. You can see the Google spreadsheet any way you want and make it look whatever long. Whatever they need is just a URL to look at what we are looking at right now. So you, from your FileMaker solution, can feed a spreadsheet with data to look perfectly good for a CFO. To be able to work in this solution, we needed a way to communicate with our clients and the workers. So we are pushing out notification using the Fireside, but it could also have been that you'd like to push text messages to your clients or your colleagues or whatever. So it could be an SMS gateway that you need to call. There are free ones. You can call WhatsApp. You can use Signal. But most of the ones are, when you send text messages, want you to pay a little bit. If you do Firebase notification, you can have, I think it's about 100,000 send-outs per month. So you can work pretty hard before you get any kind of fees coming out of Google. But this is a really good way of doing that integration to reach your clients. Make them aware of that you have delivery coming up on Thursday, or where we need some more information from you, or anything else. You can really give them awareness of that you need some information from them. In most of our solutions that we build today, we need a way of getting things paid. It could be through Stripe, but in Sweden we use something called Swish. And by paying to Swish, you can use a barcode, or you can be sent a direct call of what needs to be sent. So these are different things. Someone's trying to buy ice cream right here with strawberries and chocolate sauce, and this how much they're going to be paid in Sweden. But you need different ways of getting your payment done, and also being able to reimburse, because most of the payment integrations you can do today, not only can you get paid, because in some cases you type something wrong. They didn't want to buy that part, or they want to get something back. So you need also to make the reimburse available for your integrations. I think most of you know this one at the bottom here called MailChimp. Have you heard about something called Mailgun? Yeah. So both of these services are mail providers. So we can send text emails out of FileMaker. We could produce HTML emails, but it's rather hard to create the HTML ones because they won't look as good as the client probably would like to. These ones give you a possibility of creating a template where you just feed it with data and it will look superb once it goes out to your colleagues, your clients, or whatever you need to send it out to. So in the case we'd like to talk to Mailgun, we need to know what's the domain we'd like to use, what's the API key we need to use, and then we need to call this API. So that's the URL. And then we're picking out the values from when we did execute SQL. We had to pick out the data along with the API key and the message we like to send out. So that's a simple way of connecting to one of those templates. So a template could be looking something like this, where you feed it with any kind of data that you want, but it's what's good looking with this one is they will transform to the shape of any device that you like to do. So you don't have to think about that when you do your emails. Mailgun or MailChimp will handle that for you. And once you set it off, you can also look into statistics to see who actually opened up the email, which buttons did they click on, what browsers were they using, and all that kind of information, which will become very important for your marketing department. And the reason why I showed you two different ones here is that MailChimp were the first one and are the biggest one on the market, but they're becoming rather expensive. Mailgun have most of that different kind of techniques you have to send things out in the API. So they're cheaper, and therefore I prefer going with Mailgun right now. Anyone heard of Trustpilot? The Trustpilot is a little bit like Google Review, but on a more personal level. And in the same way here, you can put that on your homepage saying, you did really well. I'd like this service. I like their pancakes or whatever they do. You can put this on your webpage to give an awareness of that they're doing very good. In Europe, now there are new laws coming around that we need to start sending e-invoices. And with e-invoices, we need to do them in a certain way. So we need to create things that the user can receive. And that's not only by paper. They also like to be able to pay them straight off. And what you can do then is that you can provide them with a barcode, because we can create that from FileMaker using plugins or call an API to receive a barcode available for you. And in this case, we are using the Swish like Stripe, a barcode that they can get directly into paying directly from your MasterCard, Visa card, your bank account, whatever you set up to pay, so that the payment will become easier and much faster coming to your account. Because if they do a transaction like this, you can also handle that transaction in the background to check whether it was paid the full amount, half of the amount, or whatever they did. So you would be able to keep up with what was happening on your account for the different orders that went out. What I'm proud of is that integration. I hope all of you have been buying something from IKEA. It's Swedish, you know. Besides ABBA, I think that's probably the most famous thing. IKEA has only allowed one partner in Europe to integrate towards them. And then luckily for us, that was us. So when you go into the IKEA store in Sweden and you buy things, once you check out, you're asked if you'd like someone to come and assemble it for you. And that's through the solution that we built that you just saw. So a lot of people go into IKEA every day to buy like a kitchen or wardrobe, whatever it might be. And they're just too lazy to read the instructions. I don't read the instructions either, but yeah, the IKEA instructions are the boringest ever. But this store feeds data into the solution on a daily basis because we set it up with a Postman documentation. It feeds the order with whatever they might need. So we put up a partner API, a third API, where IKEA is communicating with the solution. So it creates the order with the client, with the address, who was the sales partner, what store was it made out of, and then feeds with the order rows, like all the articles that needs to be set up. So when it comes to these integrations, once you've done one and you say that to another client, most of this client gonna ask for the same thing. And to keep an API up to date could be sometimes kind of hurdling because they update things. So for Google, for example, I think we are on the 5th version for the Maps API right now. And to keep everything up to date, what we have done is that we have created our own API hub. And by API hub, I mean, we have my company is rather big in FileMaker, so we have probably 150 FileMaker servers. And clients besides that, they like to integrate to different resources. So instead of having each one of them talking to different services, we have one API hub that they have to talk to. Everyone have to talk to that one because that's the one that's doing the integration with the different ones. So if there are any changes on the Google Maps API, there's just one place where we need to do the change. Instead of having 98 integration where we have to keep track of the versions they're on and making sure everything is working and we get the right data back in the format that we want. Instead, we can make the same kind of call from here and only update it here. So once now you get started and doing a whole bunch of these integration, store them in one file and post them on your FileMaker server so that you can call it and then from there make the call to the different APIs that you like to connect to. The response is going to come back here that could feed your database with a result. They will save you tons of hours once anything goes bad. So build your own API hub. What we can do also, and I'm not saying you're going to go this way, but what we can do, we can build custom connectors in Claris Connect. It's a little bit tricky. You need to know and understand how you write JSON in a very controlled way, but you can build them there as well to be like a hub for your connections. I looked this one up. Gartner are doing surveys all the time. And according to Gartner in January 2025, the return on investment statistically says that 83% of all modern data solutions today have at least one integration. So you should definitely do that same thing. And it not only here will improve efficiency and a whole bunch of automations. Now that we have AI, we can control all of things. It will enhance your data consistency to make sure your data is up to date. It will make your decision maker better. Look at that spreadsheet that the CFO like to look at. You will have a scalability and flexibility of growing into your solution and having other ones looking at your data. And it will save you a lot of money instead of having to do a lot of things manually. Okay, that brings me to Q&A. Do we have any questions? That was too much of information there. Yes, but
when it comes to like integration into, let's say, data warehousing.
Yep.
So let's say you have a whole bunch of data sources that aren't just FileMaker.
Yep.
But you want to use Tableau, the CEOs and the, sales marketing teams and the managers want reports.
Yep.
That has to integrate a lot of data. We've used MirrorSync to take data out of FileMaker and put it into a SQL database, but there's limitations. It seems slow. And do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, so when you have other resources, when you need to feed data into, there are multiple things you can do. So the MirrorSync have GoSync and other ways you can store data, but when you go that way, you're kind of, especially for MirrorSync, you're in need of having Java installed, and Java is not really 100% compliant with what FileMaker do, so it crashes and then you aren't up to date anymore. There is a direct integration that you can do to Tableau that you feed it with data.
Yeah.
And when I have a client that are asking for Tableau or Click or something equal to that, there are tools for you to look at data in another's perspective that are way faster than FileMaker producing charts, KPIs, and such things. I feed it data on a daily basis. So instead of giving them an up-to-date data, I'm giving them and telling them that you're going to have all that resources at lunchtime or just at midnight, and they're usually fine with that.
Yeah. So it's an API that that you hook up from Tableau to your database, right?
So I feed it with data.
Okay.
So instead of having them connect to your data source, I'm pushing the data up because I am the source. So I know what it's supposed to look like.
Okay.
Yes?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the API hub a little more. So you've got like 150 FileMaker servers with files that are calling APIs.
Yeah.
They're reaching out to the API hub.
Yep.
What's on the hub? Is that a FileMaker file that's storing these the mapped out API connections?
So think of that being like any other API that's available for calls from the outside. So web calls. And it's just going to give you a web call back. But it's available for anyone that I give it to. So exactly the same like Google or AWS or whatever it might be. You just give it whatever it needs to give you, feed it with that data that you want, and also have a specific resource to call another API.
But what are those connections in the API hub? How are they? Is that a FileMaker database you're talking about that it's calling?
It is a FileMaker database.
Okay, so it's a database.
But it's using the data API to call in.
Okay.
And then the data API can do anything you want these days. You can call scripts or you can create records, whatever you do. And then it's like the QoS that runs each call that comes in and feeds back the information.
Okay, so you're using the data API to connect to another FileMaker database that has the APIs mapped out for all of these other connections.
Yes. And the good thing about this one is that when you do have such a resource, you would know which client that made this call. So you can have a transaction log, and then you can get paid for using certain pipes. So for example, if we take DocuSign, you only need to have one account for DocuSign for signing all the documents instead of having to keep track of 150 different companies. And then you can make a deal with DocuSign, say, if I have 100,000 signings per year, what would you get for each one of them? Your client would see another price on their webpage, but you will get them at a much better price. So you can get cut off in the middle there and make a little bit of money on each call that's making.
And the API hub idea, isn't there like a company somewhere who would have thought of the same thing and would provide that as a service? Does that exist? Or
so the Zapier that I talked about earlier have a whole bunch of these different ones that you connect to. But you probably have a local like accounting system or something else you'd like to talk to. But in Zapier, you can't really control that in a way that we just said here.
Right.
So you can't really see the specific ones. What we are doing here is that we are kind of replicating Zapier or Connect by handling everything on our own. One thing we can do without is we can have redundancy. So I'm not like to talk bad about Connect or anything, but it's not redundant today. So if it's down, nothing happens. But we have redundancy on our hub, so we will actually be able to take calls if one of the servers is down, we have another one.
I think you're touching on my question a little bit there, but do you have any special setup for your hub to sort of help with the performance since you have so many calls being done to just the one hub? Do you have any specific process?
Yeah, so the OData that we just received right now, it's super fast to create data. So we used to have CWP that's still existing, but it's rather slow. We have data API that can only have about 25 transactions happening at the same time, else it will become super slow. But the OData so far seems to be taking more and more data without having any problems. And now when you can call so easily, so there are different ways of reaching your tables and your structure of your tables of your databases. So with OData, you can create data, you can update data, and then you can delete data. And it's an instant. It's super fast because it's not reaching a layout where you first have to load the layout information and then do any connections on it. OData is just reaching the structured table straight to it and taking the action.
So then the hub that you're using, you're integrating from your applications to the hub using OData instead of using
Yes. So whenever I'm doing a call here, think of it being a web call to a service, and could be in a Microsoft or anything, that then takes the action for you.
Yep.
So it used to be a leverage of CWP calls and data APIs, but now we're switching it to the call data API or data calls because we think that's more beneficial.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any tips or advice for like we have a small company, maybe 60 employees, 2 IT resources. We integrate different software to our FileMaker database, but we only have 2 people working on the integrations. And for the years, we've done maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 API integrations, and it's kind of adding up. Any tips on how to maintain that or speed up the integration process or things of that nature? For small scale.
Yeah, I mean, we have clients as they're all like 3-4 people, but we still do integrations for them because we can see it's so quite beneficial for them.
Yeah.
And then we have bigger companies where there are hundreds of people working, but they have different needs. So you need to find those APIs that will actually help you with your automations or cleaning your data or helping the process. And once you find that, it's most of the ones that I show you today, it's really easy to integrate to ours. Especially the bigger ones. Microsoft Graph, they can do pretty much anything on the Microsoft platform. You can create the emails, you can create the things in your calendar, you can delete post in email, you can talk to SharePoint, or anything that you more or less want to. Same thing with Google. They have so many things there. And if you like the AWS have the same thing. So it's more or less actually what your company works with. So DocuSign has a bunch of competitors that are doing things equally good. They're rather expensive, but they're really, really good. Same thing as we talked about MailChimp. They do everything, but they're rather expensive. So there are some other ones that are cheap, but they can achieve everything that you like. So it's all about what your needs are. And I don't know what your business are like, so can't really tell or give you a good clue of where to go. Thank you. Any other questions? I was told that I needed to show this one. So please rate my session. Glad you were here. Hope you learned a little bit. Catch me up in the corridor if there's any other questions you might have. And then keep on attending the conferences and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.